Talking Point with Stephen Taylor. It's good to have you along, and today joined by a man that I grew up listening to, and he's still younger than me. That is nuts, man. Rob Vember, how are you, buddy?
I was just about to say, it's like the worst introduction. A man I grew up listening to. I'm good. How are you, Stephen?
On the radio, not anywhere else.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here, man. So take us back to those days where you, were you born in Cape Town?
Yeah, so...
Because many people are confused.
Many people
are Vember comes from.
Yeah, many people are confused, and I kind of like the confusion.
Yeah.
There's an air of mystery, I guess. Born in Cape Town, I always kind of, stopped the bread with, I feel like I'm a product of South Africa, which sounds maybe a bit cheesy and corny, but I grew up in Cape Town, in the southern suburbs until standard 1, grade 3, and then moved to the northern suburbs to Belleville, where my parents still are.
Oh, in Belleville.
In Belleville. But then left after matric to go to the Eastern Cape to study at Rhodes for...
Kan jy Afrikaans praat?
Ik kan Afrikaans praat.
Okay,
beter Afrikaans verstaan.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I can certainly wing it. I wouldn't say save it, but I can definitely understand it fully. My mom's side of the family is Afrikaans, so I really should have no excuse.
All right.
Went to the Eastern Cape for 3 years, studied at Rhodes, so I had that experience, and then came back here for a year, and then went to Joburg for 6 or 7 years, and then came back here. So I've been a bit all over, but I'm certainly Cape Townian.
So where's home? Cape Town?
Yeah, home's Cape Town. I have a home in Johannesburg, as in bought my first house.
Oh wow! Still there?
Still in Joburg.
Okay.
And now rent and pay someone else's bond in Cape Town, which frustrates me to no end. But certainly Cape Town is home.
And your dogs? Are they still around?
My dogs.
I saw them on TV when they interviewed you on another show. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you still got the same one?
I still got this. Well, mine is one, sadly. I've got 2 left.
Okay.
But they are everything. I kind of got hung up on the point at some time when I became the dog guy, but it is what it is. People just, whenever they think of me, apparently they think of dogs, which is great because I think there's.
And you're not wearing your hat today, which is great.
And I think it's your.
He does have a real head.
I have a balding head, which is really what the hat was about.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was I think this is probably the first interview I've done without the hat.
Oh, thank you. I feel honored.
No, I've let it go. It was another thing to kind of remember, and then it became pressurized.
It was trending, right, at that time?
Apparently, well, I don't know whether.
Well, you made a trend.
I made a trend. Yeah, it's the only thing I ever made trend in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I let it go. It was just too much work. But the dogs bring me so much joy. It's unconditional love. It's very rare in life, I think, that you get that.
So you are single then?
I am very much single, yes.
Why, Rob Vember? Why?
That's an excellent question. How much time do we have in the show?
And you got to get the name right, Rob Vember.
Wow. That's the other question. Is it real? Yes, it's real.
Is that your real name?
It's
really?
my real name.
Do you have a second name?
Stuart. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Not little.
No.
Big.
No. I've heard it all. I'm waiting. Next thing you're gonna come up with a no joke.
Yeah.
What happened to the no?
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm single. But happy.
Okay.
Happy. Very.
But open.
No, yeah. I'm very open to whatever comes my way. I have a lot of my friends are. I could be careful with them watching this. Significantly older than I am.
Okay.
Kind of my core group of friends, probably that I hang out with more often than not, in terms of just dinners and things, are all kind of hitting 50.
Oh wow.
And they're constantly trying to kind of set me up. But I feel. It's so funny that you say that, because one person I know in particular who's going to be watching this is going to currently be on the floor after you've just made that comment. I referred to one of her friends as a cougar.
Oh wow.
And didn't go down well, apparently.
Yeah.
But no, I'm hesitant, so I don't do the Tinder. I'm not on any dating apps and things.
Yeah.
I'm hesitant to go on dates with people who want to be in a relationship.
Oh.
I don't.
What? Don't we all want to be in a relationship?
No, do we?
Okay.
No.
No.
So
you have a good point.
Yeah. So
okay.
no. So the point is. Well, be careful how I phrase this. What is wrong with you that you so desperately need someone else in your life? If you were entirely whole.
Are you speaking to me now?
I'm not. The generic you. If you were entirely, whole and complete as a human being.
Yeah.
And that's not to say, we all get lonely and, on occasion long for companionship and that kind of thing. That's normal. But I'm hesitant with people who are constantly looking. Because
true.
why are you so hung up on finding someone? If you just, be at peace and at one with the world, let it come to you. If it's the right thing, it will come. Says he, being single for, I think 3 years now. But yeah, it's certainly not something that I'm chasing.
Okay.
I'm very conscious and aware of being true to myself. I can get very deep, Stephen.
That's good. I can see you've been studying.
Being true to myself and being comfortable with who I am before accepting anyone else into my life. And certainly,
I think that's where we get it wrong sometimes.
Absolutely.
Because we're so broken and so wanting that love and that affection that we just go and meet anybody, and then it doesn't work, and then we're like, oh yeah, but why?
Yeah, this notion of you complete me. It's such rubbish.
It is rubbish.
No one completes you. You have to complete yourself, and then I think your relationship would be so much more fruitful if you came to it whole and gave your whole self to someone, as opposed to now expecting someone to make you whole.
I'm learning something. Wow. We should do a love show with Rob Vember.
Are you in a relationship? I know this is your show, but are you?
No.
Okay, no. I interviewed just as an aside.
You can interview me. It's fine.
I interviewed as an aside. It's nature, creature of habit. A massive South African rock star whose name I'm not going to give you. And we had it was a random. He came in on a public holiday.
A few, so.
He came in on a public holiday for some reason. Obviously punting some gig, and it was very chill. So the usual crew in terms of my show wasn't around. It was just me. It was a public holiday. Everyone else was off, and we had a great conversation on air. But the conversation off air was even better. And
That's sometimes how it is.
Yeah, he had met me. We'd met over the years, and he was aware of my ex-girlfriend and wanted to know kind of what happened. And I just spoke him through it. And he sat there, and I could see he was more intrigued, and seemed like he cared a lot more than I thought. That people just talking about your love life, who cares?
Yeah.
The next time I saw him, which was a couple of months later, he said to me, I went home and broke up with my girlfriend after that chat with you. So be careful if you're watching this.
Wow.
Yeah, just because he could recognize that he was in that same mindset of, what are we doing here? Are we still growing?
But we do get stuck in the world, don't we?
Absolutely.
And social media is also part of that.
Totally.
And I see that you're not really that active, which is good.
So I've unplugged a lot from it since leaving my regular kind of afternoon show that I had. So it's part of KPIs now in terms of you have to be on social media, you have to tweet, you have to be seen, you have to, a million and one things, and it's been one of the most liberating things to not have to. I still, have somewhat of a presence in terms of I still have a little radio show on the side, but it's
We'll
not.
get to that.
It's not a driving force. Certainly, I certainly don't feel that my opinion needs to be heard on everything, because everyone else has an opinion, and making it mine's really not going to make that much of a difference. But I just think it's again being at peace with the world and not buying in and being baited all the time, because there's a lot of baiting going on. So no, my Facebook page, and apologies to whoever bothers to follow it, but you probably don't realize because there's nothing going on there. Twitter, I retweet once in a while whenever Man United's playing. I might have a go.
And you guys lost recently.
Thanks for that. But other than that, I really try to not push my blood pressure up for reasons that
there's
just can't control.
People that troll you as well, which gets quite odd.
Yeah, so luckily I learned with that years ago, thankfully. Even before Twitter was really a thing, I realized that doing what we do in the business that we're in, you're just never going to please everyone.
No,
and the same goes for your life generally, whether or not you're in radio or in some form of public space, you're never going to please everyone. And so the criticism you need to take, and I try to always with people who I work with equal measure. If you're going to take the praise and the smoke being blown up, then with as much fervor and that's amazing, then you need to take the criticism with the same amount.
But that's how we learn.
So
forget that.
Yeah. So with equal measure is so the criticism is always going to be there. You're just never going to please everyone. What can you do?
So where did your love for radio come from? Who were you listening to growing up?
So it was a sad story. I was a bit of a loner, growing up. I probably still am a bit of a loner. And
but that's weird. I'm the same. I would say that were you shy? But most radio people are like that.
Exactly, and this is the misconception. People always think when you meet new people and you're in new environments, and all of a sudden there's a public speaking thing that needs to happen. Everyone looks at you and go, I sit alone in a room with maybe 2 or 3 other people. Yet and I understand the notion that, but there are all these people listening. Sure, but they're not I'm not looking at them.
No.
In the best case scenario, I try and forget about them when I'm actually doing what I do.
So would you say the radio is an art?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is probably been the biggest problem, in my humble opinion, with radio. And I'd say, yeah, internationally, but very specific to South Africa as well, where there is this combination of, is it an art, is it a science? Is it a formulaic thing that you can structure?
No.
Can you go from A to B to C and end up with Z? There's an element of that, certainly. I mean, radio consultants from around the world will tell you that.
Yeah.
But at its core, surely it's an art.
No,
and I think we've lost a lot of the art because we're so busy chasing numbers in terms of chasing listening figures, which ultimately relates to, hopefully, cash. It's a business.
Yeah.
It's a corporation.
Yeah.
But we've certainly lost a lot of the art of radio.
So who did you listen to?
Who did I listen to? A wide array of people. I mean, listening to Five back in the day, so whether it was Mark Gilman, and that was a thrill eventually getting to meet him. The Mark Gilmans of the world, the Nigel Pearce, of course, used to listen to him quite a bit. John Maytham's been around for ages, and that's been another kind of thrill, being able to work in the same corridors as he has. He's, I mean, amazing mind. Certainly. So those are some of the key ones that stand out, and then the people who are around, because who are now my peers, and a lot of them I certainly had a lot of respect for back in the day. I suppose the tragic thing is when you meet some of these people and really
rather keep them at a
but certainly, I mean, so Nigel Pearce was there. It was always as a bit of an anorak, consuming
Uncle Gavin.
consuming radio and being interested in the movements. Was always fascinated how people are moving from.
He doesn't age.
Not at all. Moving from one place to the other. Gilman, I think with Gilman and Gilman leaving, a lot of the art of radio died, because South African radio. Because he was a master at creating content.
Yeah.
It's one thing to come on air every day and talk about what's happening, and surely there's something about that, and there's something absolutely relatable about that, and there needs to be a fair measure of that. But he created radio. He wasn't waiting for the headlines to dictate what he would talk about.
He put on a show.
That's exactly it. Like, we have radio shows, and so often we forget the show bit. It was a production. Whether he was sending Danger Boy out into the streets of Joburg,
I remember that.
to go and electrify himself against a house fence, or whatever silly, stupid thing it was, but it was creating content.
Got people thinking.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So is that where your love for radio came? So when did you think, okay, I can do this?
I'm still wondering whether I can. So I used to get home after school most days, and the radio would go on. And certainly in the morning before school, it was the radio. So the radio was always there. And for a large time, because my mum works in the health professions industry, or I always get confused, used to, still does. She now lectures in that field, but doesn't work specifically. So I always used to think I'm going to be a doctor. I'm going to be a pediatrician specifically, because I was exposed to that environment quite a lot. And then as I grew older, and maybe not much wiser, because I should have maybe gone that way, and I started reading up more and hearing more. I was like, well, there's a lot of money that could be made in this business of radio. You get to work that age-old annoying thing of you get to work 3 hours a day. It's not the case.
It's not.
But that was the thinking at that stage. I could work minimal and get paid loads. So that was kind of the thinking, and then specifically start when it came to that part of high school, when you're starting to which universities, grade 11, where am I applying, what am I doing? I then started researching and which universities had produced, in my opinion at the time, the best or most talent as far as radio and just media and TV in the country was concerned. And it was a fair mix of UCT to a lesser extent, just in terms of output. So in terms of numbers of people produced, Tux was huge, and then Rhodes.
But Mark Gilman came from UCT.
Mark Gilman came from UCT, absolutely. But I then, Jeremy Mansfield was a Rhodes boy back in the day. Nicole Fox, who was huge on 5 then, she was from Rhodes.
Was she there when you were there?
No, she wasn't. She was. She's older than I am. She was my time. The tons of people, with David O'Sullivan from the talk space, but I mean, loads more. I mean, the list is quite long, and thought, well, okay, that seems like where I need to be. And also the idea of leaving home was sounded great.
Oh, yeah.
So, but again, there was no guarantee. It was getting to Rhodes, studying journalism and politics, and then getting into the radio was still an audition. I mean, there was
you studied politics?
Yeah, I studied politics.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Getting into radio was still an audition, so there was no guarantee. Luckily, I got in the Feb of my first year and worked there for the full 3 years. And radio is actually the reason I left earlier, which is still one of my, I won't say regret, because I don't think I regret anything in life, but I had to make a choice at the end of my third year. I was doing a 4-year degree. Hart, then in Cape Town, made me an offer, unexpectedly.
That was off air, right?
No, so for what I'm doing right now, weekend breakfast.
Oh, okay.
So I'd gone to Hart to inquire about back work. And I walked in, and an hour later I had a job offer, which was just weird.
Oh, wow.
Which is great, but weird. And not expected.
Yeah.
And because this was in December of that year, whatever the year it was now. And I was due to go back to complete my 4th year. And didn't go back, so I kind of downgraded my degree, still left with a degree, just not the one that I'd set out to do.
Yeah.
And came back to work for Hart.
And then you went to 5.
From Hart, I went to 5.
So did you apply at 5 FM? They approached you?
They approached me, which was cool, and started weekends there, and then worked my way up slowly or quickly, whichever way, over the course of the next, I think.
Who was program manager there?
Corin Olsen.
Oh, yes.
At the time.
Okay.
I always feel like I've been through many programming. During my time at 5, I think I went through 3.
Sure.
But Corin was the one who thankfully hired me. There's some mix-up about the meeting. They had left Joburg and forgot my number. They were coming to Cape Town for other business, so there were 3 of them. Station manager, programs manager, and sales manager. And they had left my telephone number in Joburg somehow. No one had it on their phone. And I sat waiting outside of our meeting point, and no one was rocking up, and sweat's going, forgotten about me, that's it, done, because I think this is my big break. And eventually, when I mustered up the courage to call and go, where are you? They explained, and then I had my interview at a Juicy Lucy, as it was, still at the airport back in the day.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, worked out well.
So how long were you at 5?
Time is such a thing for me. It was 5 or 6 years. It was, whether it was 5 or 6, 2008 to 2014. So
was that something that you always dreamed of?
Yeah, so 5 was always the goal.
I think it still is for everybody.
Certainly in terms of as a kid growing up as the kind of the foremost youth entertainment authority, I think was their pay of line back in the day. Certainly that was the vision, that was the goal, that was the cool, funky place to be. So at the time it was absolutely something that I wanted to do and was very proud to have been a part of, and still have great memories from having worked there.
And I know in radio and the industry that we're in, we get to meet some interesting people. Who have you met or interviewed along the way that you're just like, oh my goodness, is this really happening? So I'm sure you get those moments, right?
Yeah, so look, I'm much to the irritation of a lot of my friends, I'm very measured, annoyingly so in terms of calm. Very few things that really excite me, to be honest. So I can't say that I was, heart palpitations. Excited, but cool interviews, certainly. Jared Leto from 30 Seconds to Mars.
Wow. In face-to-face?
In face-to-face,
wow.
And that was a luck. Fresh was off.
Oh, right.
And I was the go-to sub.
Sure.
So stood in on the drive show on 5 and got to interview him.
Man. How is he?
He was great. He was really, really thoughtful, just in terms of his responses. Interestingly, was warned and knew from previous interviews that he doesn't, when he's doing the music thing, he's fully there as part of the band.
Oh, so he doesn't talk about his
doesn't want to talk about the movies. Which I respect. Sure, whatever.
That was one of my favorite bands growing up. They kind of disappeared.
So he was cool, very thoughtful in terms of his responses, and I loved it. And then Jared Leto, sorry, I just said that. Ryan Tedder, that's the one I was going for. Ryan Tedder from One Republic. Interviewing him backstage at the Dome in Joburg before he went on stage. So that was very cool. So there have been a couple of more music people. And then, I mean, locally, and this was, I was still at varsity just as I was wrapping up there, John Carney, South African.
Oh, yes.
I mean, he's amazing.
Yes.
A really amazing actor and just human being. So that was cool from a local point of view. So yeah, there have been a couple of people along the way. Strangely, interviews, in terms of me conducting interviews on radio, has never been one of my favorite things to do.
Really?
Unless I thought the person had something worthwhile to offer. And the sad thing is not everyone has worthwhile things to offer.
Yeah.
So it was certainly one of the worst things, being forced to interview. When I say forced to do the job, you got things you got to tick off, and you get told to do it, you must do it. And there'd be a lot of those things. You know, we're partnering with Business X on this thing. Interview them.
Yeah. You know,
exactly. So it was never one of my favorite things to do, but certainly, you know, and not just because they're celebrities. If the story is good and worth telling and interesting, then more than happy to do it. But I think by far the others outweighed the really good, interesting ones. So
now you're doing 9-4-7 weekend breakfast 7 to 10, Saturday and Sunday.
Yeah, correct.
Shame, man.
Yeah, my sleep is a thing of the past.
So what time do you wake up? Like 5?
So I'm up by probably about 5:30.
Okay.
And luckily,
you stay close to the studio.
I stay close enough to the studio to get there within 10 minutes.
Have you ever been late?
No, I've never ever been late.
Really?
I was talking to someone about this. I overslept for a show once.
Yeah.
And when I say overslept, would not have woken up had it not been for my dad. So I had been based in Joburg, but it was over the December period, working on 5FM. I'd come to Cape Town for holiday, and so stay with my folks, but it was still filling in holiday from here. And it was, I'm sure if you go back and Google, you'll find it. There was a bug in the Apple software that everyone who had updated software by midnight or whatever the case was on that specific New Year, because it was a New Year's morning.
Oh, yes.
The alarms never went off.
Oh, my word.
So I'd set an alarm, but the alarm never went off.
Sure.
So then my dad kind of casually came into the room and went, "Not working today." And, you know, then just flat out panic, but it's a New Year's morning. I don't know if anyone's listening anyway. So it was chill. That was about a half an hour late.
Okay.
But other than that, no, touch. I've never been late for a show. I've missed the show completely once or twice. Kind of cutting it fine, getting flights from Cape Town back to Joburg in that instance or whatever, and the flights just, you know, the flights are delayed.
But that's understandable, right?
Yeah, well, so you've got to plan better than that. But but no, thankfully I'm very, very particular about punctuality. So
you're studying now?
I'm studying.
For your sins, as you say.
For my sins.
I love how you put that.
Yeah, for my sins. It's something that I never thought. Something's not one of my favorite things to do. Certainly the
do you have the patience for that?
I have the patience for it. I certainly have the yearning to learn.
But your mind wanders.
It's not even the mind wandering. It's the what is the relevance? Because sometimes in the moment you don't see the relevance. So, you know, I'm doing this degree, but now I'm learning this particular thing, but how is this ever relevant? Or how is this actually going to help me in the real world? So that kind of is a bit of a tune-out factor. And then also just the kind of pressurized situations of writing an exam, which I never really enjoy.
I think none of us enjoy
in this day and age, there must be a better way to test people's abilities than to, you know, sit them down in this very artificial situation for 3 hours and now spew out information that you've managed to retain.
I agree, because practically that's not how you...
It's not how the real world works. And I understand that they, you know, as an institution, they need to test your knowledge somehow, but there must be a better way than that artificial setting. So, yeah, it's not something that I thought I would go back to doing, although I had been toying with the idea a lot over the course of the last 2 to 3 years. Thought maybe part-time, let me try and do something, but now the opportunity has presented itself and I'm fully immersed in it. I happen to be caught me.
Are you enjoying it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Something different.
I'm at the right place at the right time, I feel. It's the right environment, cool people. It just, I thoroughly am enjoying it. I have no regrets about, because that was the thing, I hope I'm not going to regret this decision. I have no regrets about tackling it. So, and it's going like that. So another interesting episode of Talking Point with Stephen Taylor. Thank you very much to my guest, Rob Vember. Of course, make sure you are connecting with me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Stephen Taylor SA. Catch you back next week, same time, same place. God bless.